Tonight, I invite you to let go of the day and drift with me into a softer time. If you're sitting up, gently recline. If you've already curled beneath your blanket, nestle in and feel its warmth wrap around you like a patient embrace. Dim your lights if you haven't already, or let the natural glow of night hold the room. And as you settle in, I wonder, where in the world are you listening from tonight? And what time is it there, in your own quiet corner? And remember, if this calm journey helps you unwind, you might tap like or subscribe, only if it feels right, never in haste. Now, breathe. Listen for the subtle hush in the air, the kind that comes just before sleep takes its careful hold. Imagine, in that quiet, a faint crackle of firewood in the corner of an old parlour. You can almost smell the faint trace of smoke mingled with the sweet whisper of baked bread cooling on a wooden counter. That's where our story begins. Not in a faraway land, but right here in America in the early 1900s. Let me take you there. Picture a cobblestone street at dusk, lamps beginning to glow faint amber, though not electric everywhere just yet. Some neighbourhoods had already wired into the new age of electricity by 1902, but many homes still relied on gas lamps or kerosene lanterns. Can you see it? The soft hiss of flame under glass, flickering against wallpaper patterned with roses. The shadows stretch long and the night begins early. Imagine stepping into a kitchen then. The air is warm, heavy with the scent of coffee, strong and slightly bitter, boiled on the stove in a dented tin pot. A child sneaks a piece of rock candy from a glass jar on the shelf, its sweetness sharp against the tongue. Rock candy was cheap then, just sugar crystallized on strings, yet to a child in 1905, it felt like holding treasure, a sugar diamond, glistening as it caught the light. Doesn't that make you smile? How something so small can feel like the world? Outside, the hum of a wagon rolls by, wooden wheels rattling against uneven stone. The horse snorts, breath misting in the cool night air. The driver calls out a friendly word, though the sound drifts away almost immediately, swallowed by the quiet rhythm of the town. No blaring horns, no buzzing phones, only the steady cadence of hoofbeats, the kind of sound that could lull you like a metronome. Now take a step further. Imagine the taste of a fresh apple pie cooling by the window, the crust golden, flaky, and just slightly uneven. No machines pressing it into perfection, only hands skilled and patient. Apples were plentiful, especially in the northeast, and pie was both comfort and tradition. In 1900, a slice of pie wasn't fast food, it was family ritual. Each bite told you about the orchard, the season, the care put into every turn of the rolling pin, and if you close your eyes, maybe you can hear a phonograph playing softly in the parlour. Scratchy, yes, but tender all the same. A waltz drifts through, the kind couples might sway to slowly in the dim light, their feet brushing the worn carpet. The music isn't perfect, it wobbles, it cracks, but perhaps that's what makes it so human, so soothing. Tell me, doesn't it feel gentle to imagine a world where time itself seems slower? Days stretched longer, nights settled deeper, and small pleasures carried more weight. A spoonful of molasses on bread could feel indulgent. A penny candy bought at the corner shop was like a prize to savour. Think of that for a moment. When was the last time something so small made you pause, close your eyes, and sigh with contentment? The year 1901 saw Theodore Roosevelt step into the presidency after McKinley's assassination. But here in the kitchens and parlours of ordinary folk, life moved with quieter revolutions. A new sewing machine might change a family's evenings. A coal stove might warm a home better than wood. These weren't grand speeches or historic battles. These were the textures of life. The small comforts, the tiny innovations, the little rhythms that stitched together the fabric of a generation. And as we sit in that parlour, listening to the soft murmur of voices from the street outside, perhaps you can imagine yourself among them, resting your head back, feeling the chair creak gently beneath you, letting the fire's warmth sink into your bones, letting the pie cool in the window, the candy sparkle in the jar, the phonograph hum in its fragile way. So let this first night be our beginning, a gentle stroll into the world as it once was, a world not without hardship, yet softened by rituals of sweetness, by the slow beat of hooves in the street, by the warm crackle of home. And as we close this first chapter, think of the glow of the lantern dimming low, the music fading, the pie cooling to silence. The night stretches on, and we'll follow it into other places, other flavors, other hidden corners of early America. For now, rest in this quiet room, listen to the hush, and when you're ready, let us wander forward. The night has grown a little deeper, and with it the rhythm of the town softens further. Imagine, if you will, a small boarding house on the edge of a city. Its wooden steps creak as you climb, the faint scent of coal smoke hanging in the hallway. You reach the dining room, where a long table stretches across the space, covered with a simple cloth. A kerosene lamp rests at the center, its flame steady, casting a circle of amber warmth. Here, the boarders gather after a day's work. Factory hands with soot still lingering on their collars, seamstresses with tired eyes but lively chatter, and a schoolteacher who carries a stack of papers to grade. Their meals aren't lavish, but they're hearty, dependable. Imagine steaming bowls of beef stew, thick with potatoes and carrots, ladled into chipped china bowls. A loaf of bread, coarse but warm, rests in the middle, and each hand reaches in turn. Do you smell it? The rich aroma of beef simmering all day on the stove, mingling with onion and bay leaf, filling the air with something both savoury and safe. In 1908, this was not a novelty, it was survival. A stew could stretch what little a family had, making tough cuts of meat tender, filling bellies with warmth. And yet even in such simplicity, there is beauty. The clink of spoons against bowls is steady, like a lullaby of sustenance. One boarder laughs at a joke, his voice low and rolling. Another passes the bread with a nod, no words needed. Isn't it strange how companionship can flavour food as much as salt or spice? In the corner, a child dips bread into her bowl, carefully blowing on each bite before slipping it into her mouth. She giggles as the steam fogs her spectacles, and the table chuckles with her. These are the quiet joys, tiny sparks of life that made the early 1900s feel warm despite the draft through the windows. Now, let your imagination wander toward dessert. Perhaps tonight it is rice pudding, thick and creamy, sprinkled with a dusting of cinnamon if fortune allows. Rice was inexpensive, milk was plentiful in many towns, and sugar was just sweet enough to lift the spirit. Can you taste it? Soft, sweet, a little grainy, like a hug in a bowl. It was the kind of treat that reminded people of home, even if they were far from it. The year 1903 saw the Wright brothers take flight, and newspapers buzzed with the news of human wings. But here, in this boarding house, the wonder wasn't in the sky. It was in the comfort of knowing you had a seat at the table, that the stew would be shared, that laughter would ripple through the lamplight. What good is progress if not grounded in the warmth of supper? Imagine stepping outside after dinner, the cool night air brushing against your face. The city hums faintly. Streetcars rattle by, sparks flying as wheels grip rails. A newsboy calls out headlines, his voice sharp against the stillness. The aroma of chestnuts roasting drifts from a corner cart, their shells cracking in the heat, sending whispers of earthy sweetness into the street. Have you ever held a warm paper cone of chestnuts, the heat seeping into your fingers, the steam rising in little ghosts? It is one of those pleasures that transcend centuries. A young couple lingers near the cart, sharing a cone. She laughs softly, tucking a strand of hair beneath her hat. He offers her the largest nut, grinning as though he has gifted her the world, and maybe in that moment he has. Isn't it gentle to think that love could be measured in roasted chestnuts, in shared sweetness on a chilly evening? And so, life in the early 1900s wasn't always grand or glamorous. It was made of these small threads, bread dipped in stew, pudding stirred with care, chestnuts passed hand to hand. These threads wove together, strong and quiet, holding people steady against the winds of change. Now, as we leave the glow of the boarding house, let your mind follow the faint clatter of the streetcar fading down the tracks. The city sleeps, but not entirely. Some windows glow, some songs linger, some hearts keep time with the hush of the night. And we too will keep walking step by step into the deeper currents of this world. The night drifts onward, and our steps carry us away from the city's glow, toward the quiet sprawl of farmland. Imagine the air here, cool, damp with dew, and touched by the faint sweetness of hay. The stars above are far brighter than in town, each one glimmering like a pinprick through velvet. You can almost hear the chorus of crickets, steady and soft, a natural lullaby. Picture a farmhouse, its windows glowing faintly golden. Inside, the kitchen table is spread not with finery, but with what the land itself has given. A bowl of cornmeal mush sits at the centre, steam curling upward. Beside it, fresh butter softens slowly, ready to be spread across slices of coarse bread baked earlier that day. Cornmeal mush may sound humble, but in the early 1900s it was a staple, a quiet hero of rural kitchens. Ground corn simmered patiently into a thick, creamy porridge, simple, filling, and cheap. Sometimes a drizzle of molasses was added, dark and syrupy, sinking into the mush like rivers across a golden plain. Imagine taking a spoonful, the texture grainy yet comforting, the sweetness lingering like a promise. Have you ever had something so modest yet so deeply satisfying? The farmhouse air carries more than just food. It carries the crackle of the wood stove, the creak of the floorboards as family members shuffle in their slippers, the faint rustle of a dog settling down near the door. Every sound seems softer here, as if muffled by the vastness of fields stretching endlessly outside. Children sit at the table, their hair damp from evening baths, faces pink and clean. One boy makes a silly face at his sister, who bursts into giggles, her spoon nearly tipping over. Their mother hushes them gently, but a smile betrays her affection. Around this table, laughter is as nourishing as the mush itself. Now, let us step outside for a moment. The night air is crisp, and from the barn drifts the faint aroma of hay mingled with the earthy musk of animals. A cow shifts in her stall, bells clinking softly. Chickens rustle in their roosts, feathers whispering against wood. Can you feel the serenity of this? The way the entire farm seems to breathe slowly, steadily, in rhythm with the land. It is 1906, and cities may buzz with the shock of new inventions, but out here, life is tethered to older rhythms. The suns rise, the soils yield, the patient turn of the seasons. Electricity has not yet stretched its fingers this far, and so kerosene lamps glow warmly in every room, casting halos of light that never quite reach the corners. Isn't it soothing to think of a world where shadows were companions, not enemies? And for dessert, perhaps, there is apple butter spread thickly on bread. Apples simmered for hours, spiced with cinnamon and clove, transformed into a deep, rich paste. The spread is velvety, tangy sweet, almost like a cousin of modern jam, but with a depth that feels like autumn itself distilled into a jar. Picture biting into that bread, warm crust giving way to spiced apple richness, like tasting the orchard's memory. In the distance, a train horn calls faintly across the fields. Its low wail lingers, then fades, like a song carried by the wind. Perhaps the family pauses to listen, each wondering quietly about the people aboard, where they're going, what stories they carry. Travel is possible, yes, but expensive, and for many the train remains a dream of horizons just beyond reach. So the night closes gently, and the family retires. Children climb into iron-framed beds, quilts tuck snug around them, stitched lovingly by grandmother's hands. The parents check the stove once more, ensuring embers will smoulder through the night. The dog curls tighter by the door, his tail twitching as he dreams, and we too step softly out into the night once more. The stars are steady, the crickets still sing, and the farmhouse glows like a lantern in the vastness. Let that image linger in your mind, the quiet endurance of rural life, where every meal, every laugh, every breath is tied to the earth itself. Now, let us wander onward, carrying with us the warmth of cornmeal mush and the sweetness of apple butter into the next story waiting just beyond the horizon. The streets are quieter here, though not silent. Imagine walking through a small town in 1910, its wooden sidewalks creaking faintly under each step. The smell of fresh sawdust drifts from a carpenter's shop left open for the breeze, and somewhere nearby, the faint clang of a blacksmith's hammer echoes like a heartbeat. Yet, what draws us tonight is not work but the comfort of food, the kind that warms from the inside out. Picture a tavern tucked into the corner of Main Street. Its wooden door swings open with a groan, letting out the glow of lanterns and the hum of conversation. Inside, the air is heavy with the scent of roasted meats, hops from the beer barrels, and smoke that clings stubbornly to the rafters. The floor is scuffed, the chairs uneven, but the warmth is undeniable. Here, men in suspenders and worn boots gather after long days at the mill or the mine. Their voices are low but steady, laughter rumbling like thunderclouds rolling far away. A fiddler plays in the corner, his bow dancing across strings, filling the room with music that sways like firelight. On the tables, plates arrive, thick slices of roast pork, juices seeping into piles of mashed turnips. Pickles, sharp and briny, cut the richness. Bread is always present, crusty and torn by hand, soaking up every drop. Can you taste it? The salty tang of pickle meeting the savoury roast, the bread softening as it drinks in flavour. Meals here were not fancy, but they were filling, meant to soothe aching muscles and tired spirits. And if you tilt your head just right, you might notice the faint sweetness of ginger cake cooling in the kitchen, made with molasses, dense and dark, spiced just enough to tickle the nose. In 1907, molasses was cheaper than refined sugar, making it a favourite for baking. The cake is cut into thick squares, slightly sticky, edges caramelised just enough to crunch. Imagine biting into it, the warmth of ginger spreading through your mouth, the richness of molasses lingering like a lullaby. Conversations drift to local gossip, the price of coal, the rumour of a new factory, perhaps even talk of automobiles that have begun to appear here and there, rattling loudly and startling horses. Some laugh at the thought of these machines ever replacing wagons. Too noisy, one might say, too unreliable. And yet the world is changing, even as the tavern holds fast to its familiar rhythms. Step outside for a moment, and the air feels cool against your cheeks, carrying with it the mingled scents of tobacco and wood smoke. Lanterns swing gently from porches, casting pools of golden light onto the dirt road. The tavern door creaks behind you, letting out a burst of fiddle music before closing again, the sound muffled but still present, like a heartbeat under the night. A boy passes with a basket under his arm, filled with pretzels still warm from the oven. They glisten faintly with salt, the dough twisted into familiar knots. He sells them for pennies, calling out softly as he walks. Have you ever held a warm pretzel in the chill of evening? The salt crackling against your tongue, the dough chewy and comforting. It feels like carrying a little piece of home in your hand. And across the street, a small soda fountain glows faintly through its window. Inside, young men and women gather. Sipping root beer floats from tall glasses, their laughter rising like bubbles. Soda fountains became popular after 1900, offering sweet escapes in towns big and small. Picture the fizz tickling your nose, the ice cream softening into the soda until every sip is creamy, sweet and sparkling all at once. So this is what the evening holds in the early 1900s. A tavern filled with roasted meats and ginger cake, a boy with pretzels calling into the night, a soda fountain buzzing with young voices and fizz. Different worlds, all living side by side, all bound by the comfort of food and company. As the tavern music fades into memory, let us carry with us the taste of molasses and the warmth of roasted pork. The road stretches onward, and with it more stories wait to be told just around the bend. The morning sun rises over a small coastal town, its light spilling gently across the water, turning the waves into ribbons of silver and gold. The air smells of salt and seaweed, sharp but refreshing, mingling with the faint aroma of wood smoke drifting from chimneys. Fishing boats creak against the docks, their sails folded, nets piled high with the promise of the sea's bounty. Step into a small kitchen here, its wooden floors uneven from years of salt air creeping into the beams. On the stove, a cast iron pan sizzles, holding fresh fish caught just hours before. Imagine the skin crisping, the flesh flaking tenderly beneath the fork, a squeeze of lemon adding brightness. This was breakfast in many seaside homes, simple, fresh, and born from the ocean itself. Alongside the fish, there might be johnny cakes made from cornmeal, sizzling in butter until golden at the edges. Their smell is nutty, comforting, slightly sweet when drizzled with honey or syrup. The texture is soft inside, crisp outside, like the closest thing to a pancake's hearty cousin. Imagine taking a bite, the crunch giving way to warmth, the butter melting over your tongue. Children gather around the table, cheeks flushed from the cool breeze of the morning. One child dunks a johnny cake straight into molasses, his lips stained dark as he grins. His sister scolds him playfully, though her giggle betrays her own delight. Isn't it sweet how even small rivalries at the table can become lifelong memories? Outside, the harbour stirs with more than boats. Vendors set up stalls with oysters piled on wooden trays, their shells glistening damp in the sun. In the early 1900s, oysters were not a delicacy reserved for the wealthy. They were cheap, plentiful, and sold on street corners in big cities as well as coastal towns. Imagine slurping one, briny and cool, the taste of the sea itself in a single bite. It may seem strange now, but back then, oysters were as common as pretzels or peanuts. Walk a little further, and you might pass a bakery whose door is propped open, letting the smell of fresh bread roll out into the street. Inside, rows of loaves line the shelves, rye, white and brown, each with crusts crackling as they cool. The baker wipes his brow, flour dusting his arms, as he greets customers one by one. He wraps loaves in simple paper, the warmth seeping through as people carry them home. Can you picture it? A fisherman's wife cutting thick slices of bread, laying butter across them, perhaps adding a scrap of cheese if fortune allows. The family eats together in the glow of morning, the sound of gulls echoing outside, waves lapping against the shore. Every bite carries both nourishment and comfort, as though the bread itself were stitched into the fabric of daily life. And beyond the food, there is the rhythm of the town itself. Children run barefoot along the docks, their laughter chasing the gulls. Men repair nets with patient hands, their fingers nimble despite the calluses. Women hang laundry on lines strung between houses, the sheets snapping softly in the ocean wind. Life here is a mixture of salt, sweat, and sweetness, steady as the tide. By midday, the market grows livelier. A vendor sells clam chowder from a steaming pot, ladling it into tin cups for workers who pause briefly before returning to their labour. The broth is creamy, rich with potatoes and onions, chunks of clams sinking to the bottom like treasure. The steam curls into the cool air, carrying with it the promise of warmth in every sip. Isn't it fascinating how the sea shaped not just work, but taste? What the water offered, the people turned into sustenance, into comfort, into rituals that defined their days. From fish sizzling in pans to oysters on the street, from johnny cakes on the griddle to chowder simmering in the square, each bite tells the story of a coast bound to the sea. As evening comes, lanterns light along the docks, their reflections dancing across the rippling water. The boats rest once more, tied securely, while the families gather indoors. Perhaps dessert tonight is a blueberry cobbler, berries picked fresh from the nearby woods, their juices bubbling beneath a crust of sugar and flour, sweet, tart, messy, and perfect. And so, the day closes with the sea whispering outside the windows, the taste of salt lingering faintly in the air, and the warmth of bread, fish, and cobbler resting in contented bellies. Life here may be simple, but its richness is undeniable. Now, let your thoughts drift from the harbour, away from the gulls and the waves, toward the inland roads waiting in the quiet distance. The road leads us inland now, away from the sea and into a bustling town square. The year is 1912, and the marketplace is alive with chatter, footsteps, and the faint clatter of horse-drawn wagons pulling up with goods to sell. Imagine the air filled with the smell of freshly cut hay, mingling with roasted peanuts and warm bread drifting from stalls. The square is crowded with vendors, each calling out softly to passers-by. A man selling apples polishes them against his apron, making them shine like rubies. A woman with baskets of eggs arranges them carefully, their shells pale and fragile against the wicker. Children tug at their mother's skirts, their eyes fixed on the candy stall just ahead. Can you picture that stall? Glass jars lined neatly in rows, each filled with treasures. Peppermint sticks striped red and white, lemon drops sparkling like tiny suns, licorice ropes coiled in dark spirals. The vendor scoops a handful of gumdrops into a small paper bag, the sugar dusting the air as he folds it closed. A child clutches it tightly, as if holding a bag of pure magic. Isn't it gentle to think of candy as currency for happiness? Nearby, a baker slices thick wedges of pie to sell by the plate. Cherry, apple, and mince, all cooling on wooden boards before being served. The steam rises from the crust, carrying sweetness into the air. Imagine biting into a slice of cherry pie, the filling warm and tart, the crust crumbling softly in your mouth. 1 penny buys you not just dessert, but a brief escape into joy. Further down the row, a vendor roasts peanuts over open flame, the shells cracking as they heat. The smell is earthy, toasty, irresistible. People gather around, buying small paper cones filled with the warm nuts, the heat seeping into their hands as they snack. Have you ever noticed how food eaten in the open air tastes richer, as though the breeze itself is an added spice? And then there are pickles, barrels of them, brined and ready. Long spears pulled dripping from the brine, their crunch sharp and satisfying. Children nibble at them between bites of candy, puckering their lips but grinning all the same. Pickles were a favourite treat in markets of the early 1900s, cheap and bracing, almost like the soda of their day. Tangy, refreshing, a burst of flavour in the middle of an otherwise simple diet. The marketplace isn't only about food, it's about connection. Neighbours gather to trade news, to laugh over small jokes, to discuss the rising price of flour or the rumour of a new shop opening down the street. A fiddler plays near the fountain, his tune bright and lively, while children toss pennies into the water, watching ripples carry their wishes outward. Now picture pausing at the soda stand. The vendor pumps syrup into a glass, adds carbonated water with a hiss, and stirs it briskly. Root beer, sarsaparilla, lemon soda, all sweet, fizzy delights that sparkled on the tongue. Imagine the first sip, the fizz tickling your nose, the sweetness bright and unfamiliar like bottled laughter. For many, it was the closest thing to magic they could buy for a nickel. And in the evening, as lanterns flicker to life around the square, the vendors begin to pack away their goods. The smells linger, sweet sugar, roasted nuts, vinegar brine, blending into a memory of the day. Families head home with baskets full, children still nibbling candy sticks, parents carrying bread and butter wrapped in paper. Isn't it peaceful to think of how these simple markets were once the heart of community life? No sprawling supermarkets, no neon signs, just wooden stalls, paper bags, and the soft hum of voices beneath the glow of lanterns. As the square empties, the fountain continues to flow, its steady trickle a lullaby for the night. And we too take our leave, carrying with us the taste of pie, the crunch of pickles, the fizz of soda, and the sweetness of gumdrops. The road beckons us onward, into the next turn of the century's winding path, where new flavours and new stories wait to greet us. The night settles softly over the rolling countryside, and our path leads us toward a small train station, the kind built of brick and wood, with a single glowing lamp casting long shadows across the platform. It is 1913, and the railway is both a wonder and a lifeline, carrying goods, letters, and people across the wide stretch of America. Tonight the station hums gently with anticipation. Imagine the distant whistle, low and haunting, echoing across the fields. The sound grows louder, joined by the rhythmic clatter of wheels on rails. The train arrives with a rush of steam, white clouds billowing into the cool air, carrying with them the faint scent of coal and iron. The hiss lingers like a sigh, settling into the night as passengers disembark, stretching their legs, brushing soot from their coats. Step inside the station cafe, a modest room with wooden tables, enamel mugs, and a counter lined with pies. The air is thick with the aroma of coffee brewing, strong, black, boiled until it almost bites the tongue. The mugs are chipped, The handle's worn smooth, but the warmth seeps into your hands the moment you cradle one. Isn't it comforting to think that a cup of coffee could feel like a fire in your chest after a long, cold journey? On the counter sits a plate of donuts, not the fluffy rings we know today, but denser, fried carefully in lard, dusted with sugar. Travellers grab them quickly, dunking them into their steaming coffee. The dough is crisp at the edges, soft in the middle, the sugar melting slowly on the tongue. In 1915, donuts were often called olykoeks, or oily cakes, their Dutch roots showing through. Imagine biting into one, the closest thing to a handheld hug for the weary. Across the room, a boy unwraps a sandwich from a wax paper parcel. The bread is coarse, spread with butter, layered with ham and mustard. Nothing extravagant, but enough to fill him for the journey ahead. His mother watches with tired eyes, sipping tea, her gloved hands wrapped tight around the cup. At another table, a group of travelling salesmen exchange stories. One brags about the miles he's covered, another about the contracts he's signed. Between them sits a plate of pickled eggs, pink from beet brine, their tang sharp enough to sting the nose. Each man takes one, laughing as the vinegar makes their eyes water, the bite both harsh and satisfying. Can you picture the rhythm of this cafe? The clink of forks, the scrape of chairs, the murmur of voices mingling with the occasional burst of laughter. Every detail feels alive yet unhurried, as though time itself stretches longer in places where journeys pause. Outside on the platform, vendors sell roasted peanuts in paper cones, their scent drifting with the steam of the train. A man offers penny candies from a wooden box, peppermints, licorice, lemon drops, each one small enough to tuck into a pocket for the ride. Children beg for them, wide-eyed, their parents yielding with a sigh and a smile. And when the conductor's call echoes, "All aboard," there is a shuffle of feet, the creak of boots against wood, the rush of voices blending into one. Passengers climb aboard, clutching their parcels, their snacks, their sweets. The cafe empties slowly, leaving behind only the lingering scent of coffee and donuts, the faint ring of laughter still hanging in the air. The train exhales again, steam rising like ghosts into the night. Wheels grind against the rails, sparks flying as it pulls away, carrying with it the people, the stories, and the tastes of this brief stop. The platform quiets once more, the lamps still glowing steady, the fountain of steam fading into silence. Isn't it calming to imagine this? A world where travel was slower, where every stop felt like a pause in time, where the simplest foods, coffee, donuts, sandwiches, became anchors of comfort on restless journeys. As the last echo of the whistle fades into the countryside, let us take our leave too, carrying with us the warmth of coffee, the sweetness of sugar, and the soft rhythm of wheels rolling into the night. Ahead lies another path, another table, another story waiting for us. The road curves now into a small Midwestern town, where the prairie winds sweep gently across wide streets lined with elm trees. It is 1914, and though the world beyond is beginning to stir with storms of war, here the evenings are still filled with simpler sounds, screen doors creaking, cicadas buzzing, and the distant hum of voices carrying from the local church social. Picture the scene inside a whitewashed hall, its wooden walls glowing softly in lamplight. Long tables are covered with checkered cloths, and upon them sits a spread so generous it nearly bends the wood. Church socials in these days were not just about faith, they were about food, community, and the joy of gathering together. At one end of the table lies fried chicken, golden and crisp, its skin crackling softly under the fork. The scent is irresistible, peppery, savoury, promising a bite that crunches before melting into tender meat. Families save their best recipes for these nights, and each piece feels like a gift. Can you imagine holding it warm in your hand, the juice running, the flavour rich and grounding? Beside it sits potato salad, creamy and cool, speckled with mustard and herbs. Its tang balances the richness of the chicken, each spoonful both soothing and refreshing. Platters of deviled eggs gleam white and yellow, their filling whipped smooth with vinegar and paprika. Bowls of coleslaw crunch with cabbage and carrot, slick with vinegar dressing that sparks the tongue awake. And the desserts. Oh, the desserts stretch endlessly. Pies of every kind, their crusts golden and flaking. Apple pie, tart and sweet, cinnamon swirling like a gentle warmth. Pecan pie, sticky and nutty, its filling glistening like caramelized jewels. Chess pie, custard smooth and dusted with sugar. Imagine moving down the table, each slice offering a new sweetness, each bite a reminder of the season's bounty. Children dart between the tables, sticky fingers clinging to cookies shaped like flowers and stars. Sugar cookies dusted lightly with coloured sprinkles. Molasses cookies dark and chewy. Oatmeal cookies soft as pillows. Their laughter is bright, spilling into every corner of the hall. Doesn't it feel light like music to imagine their joy? The men gather near the coffee urn, pouring cups of strong black brew into enamel mugs. The women laugh together as they serve from the platters, trading recipes in hushed tones, each convinced the secret lies in just a pinch more spice or a touch more butter. In these kitchens, recipes were less about measurements and more about memory, passed down by taste, by feel, by heart. As the evening moves on, a fiddler takes the floor. His bow skates across strings, the melody rising and falling like a river current. Couples sway gently, some stepping into a lively dance, the rhythm of their shoes tapping against the wooden floor. Outside, fireflies blink in the grass, their glow matching the rhythm of the lanterns swinging in the breeze. Food is passed again and again, second helpings, third helpings, because here abundance is not wasteful, it is love made visible. Even those with little bring something small, and somehow the table is always full. A jar of pickles, a loaf of bread, a pan of cornbread still warm from the oven. Every offering matters, every dish a thread in the larger quilt of community. And as the night winds down, families gather their baskets, wrapping leftovers in cloth to carry home. The table's empty, but the hall still hums with the warmth of voices, the smell of fried chicken lingering in the air, the sweet aftertaste of pie resting gently on the tongue. Isn't it soothing to think of such nights, where joy was measured not in grandeur but in shared meals, laughter, and the steady beat of music on wooden floors? Nights like these stitched people together, weaving bonds stronger than any storm waiting beyond the horizon. As the lanterns are dimmed and the last echoes of the fiddle fade, we step out into the cool prairie air. The cicadas still sing, the fireflies still dance, and the road stretches onward into the gentle dark, carrying us toward the next story waiting to be told. The sun slips lower over the city skyline, its glow brushing against rooftops and factory chimneys. It is 1915, and the hum of industrial life is steady, machines clanging, whistles calling out shifts, the air tinged with the scent of coal smoke and iron. Yet, as evening settles, the city reveals a softer side, especially in its food halls and street corners. Imagine stepping into a busy tenement block where families from all over the world have settled. Each window, each door, seems to breathe with its own aromas, garlic simmering in tomato sauce, cabbage boiling in broth, onions frying in lard. The streets are a patchwork of cultures, each bringing its own recipes, its own memories, its own comfort foods. On the corner, a pushcart vendor calls out, his cart stacked with pretzels, hot and golden. Their surfaces shine with salt crystals, and steam curls upward into the cool night air. He hands them wrapped in thin paper, warm enough to cradle between your palms. Have you ever torn into a pretzel fresh from the oven, the crust crackling before yielding to the soft, chewy center? It feels like warmth itself, shared in a simple twist of dough. Next to him, another vendor sells niches, pastry pockets stuffed with mashed potatoes or kasha, the crust browned and flaky, the filling hearty and comforting. For immigrants from Eastern Europe, niches were more than a snack. They were a taste of home carried across the ocean. Picture biting into one, the steam rushing out, the flavour earthy and satisfying. Step further into the street and you'll find carts with pickles, whole cucumbers brined in giant barrels, pulled out dripping and tangy. Children hold them like torches, crunching noisily as brine runs down their wrists. Pickle vendors became iconic in these years, their barrels crowding sidewalks, their sharp scent mingling with every other aroma drifting through the block. Inside small restaurants, bowls of spaghetti steam, the noodles coated in rich tomato sauce. Italians had brought pasta into American cities, and by 1910 it was spreading rapidly across dining tables. The sauce simmers with garlic, basil and onions, its fragrance warm and inviting. Bread is served alongside, perfect for sopping up every last drop. Doesn't it make you smile to think how something so simple, so comforting, became a shared language of taste? For dessert, bakeries tempt with strudels, rugelach and cream-filled pastries stacked behind glass. Imagine the sweet dusting of powdered sugar melting on your tongue, the pastry layers shattering softly at the first bite. Each treat carries a whisper of another country, another tradition, now woven into the fabric of the city itself. And then there is the hum of conversation. Families gathered at long tables speaking in a mix of languages: Polish, Yiddish, Italian, German, Irish. Voices blending into a chorus of hope and hardship. A father tells stories of the old country, while his children laugh at jokes about their new American school. Plates are passed, bread is shared, and the food itself becomes a bridge between generations. Outside, the glow of gas lamps flickers against brick walls. A boy plays a harmonica, his tune skipping lightly across the night, while his sister claps her hands to the rhythm. Neighbours pause to listen, some humming along, their voices blending into the soft music of the street. And as the night deepens, the food carts pack up, the vendors calling their last offers. The air lingers with smells of pretzels, niches, pasta and pickles, like a memory stitched into the fabric of the city. Isn't it calming to think of how these flavours carried people through long days of labour, how they stitched cultures together into one bustling, breathing quilt of life? So we leave the tenement streets behind, carrying with us the warmth of shared bread, the tang of pickles, and the laughter of voices speaking many tongues but sharing one meal. The road ahead still waits, with new stories, new flavours, and new comforts waiting just beyond the corner. The countryside greets us again, but this time not with the hush of farms. It is the sound of a county fair drifting across the fields. The year is 1916, and fairs are the highlight of the season, gathering farmers, families, and travellers from miles around. The air is thick with the mingled scents of fried dough, roasted corn, and sweet hay trampled beneath boots. Picture the fairgrounds at dusk. Lanterns swing above the midway, casting golden circles of light onto straw and dust. The laughter of children floats through the evening, their voices rising above the call of barkers who beckon crowds towards the games of chance. Beyond the games, the smell of food is everywhere, rich, sweet, savoury, and irresistible. At one stall, corn on the cob roasts over open flame. The kernels blister and char, their sweetness deepened by fire. A brush of butter melts into every groove, dripping down your fingers as you take a bite. Can you hear that crunch? The burst of sweet juice? It tastes like summer itself, caught in each golden row. Next to it, a vendor pulls taffy, stretching it high into the air before folding it back again, over and over. Children watch with wide eyes as the glossy ribbons twist and shine. They tug at their parents' sleeves, begging for a piece. The candy is wrapped in wax paper, soft and chewy, flavoured with peppermint or vanilla. Imagine unwrapping one, the paper crinkling softly, and tasting that stretch of sweetness melting slowly on your tongue. Nearby, a woman serves pies by the slice. Blueberry, blackberry and peach, all bubbling beneath golden crusts baked that morning. The fruit juices stain the paper plates, dripping onto fingers, but no one minds. The taste is too comforting, too tied to memory. Isn't it gentle to think that pie could be both a food and a feeling? A reminder of home, even when eaten on a fairground bench? And then there are the odd little treasures of the fair, pickled sausages in jars, spicy and briny, lemonade sold for a nickel, poured fresh over ice, tart enough to make your lips pucker before sweetening with every sip. Boys walk by carrying pink clouds of spun sugar, cotton candy as light as air, sticking to their cheeks as they laugh. In 1904, cotton candy had been introduced at the St. Louis World's Fair, and by the 1910s it was spreading to county fairs everywhere. The sounds are just as vivid as the tastes. A brass band plays from the wooden pavilion, the trumpets sharp and bright against the soft hum of the crowd. Horses whinny from the stables, their hooves clopping as riders prepare for contests. The ringmaster calls out for the next round of the pie-eating contest, and a cheer goes up from the gathered crowd. Families wander the grounds, holding paper cones filled with roasted peanuts, the shells crunching underfoot as they walk. Children clutch prizes won from ring toss games, tin whistles, rag dolls, little wooden toys that squeak when squeezed. The fair is not just a place of food, but of wonder, of laughter, of lives weaving together under the lantern glow. And when night deepens, the lanterns shine brighter against the dark. The smell of frying dough lingers. Donuts and fritters dusted with sugar, still hot from the oil. Imagine biting into one, the crust crisp, the inside pillowy, the sugar coating your lips. A sweet note to end a long day of sights and sounds. Isn't it peaceful to think of this world? A fairground where joy was made from roasted corn and stretched taffy, from the hum of brass music and the laughter of neighbours, where the memory of a summer's night could be carried in the taste of pie or the crunch of peanuts in your hand. As the crowd begins to thin, the band plays its last tune, and the lanterns sway gently in the evening breeze. The fairgrounds grow quiet, but the smells and sounds linger, like a dream carried into the night. And so we step softly away from the midway, carrying with us the sweetness of taffy, the crunch of corn, and the glow of laughter shared under lantern light. The road ahead still waits, pulling us onward to the next story, the next table, the next taste of early America. The year is 1917, and our path takes us to a quiet boarding school nestled in the hills of New England. The air is crisp, touched with the sharp scent of pine, and the tall windows of the schoolhouse glow faintly as evening lessons end. Inside, desks are pushed aside, and children's voices echo down the hall as they rush toward the dining room. Imagine the clatter of tin trays and the shuffle of chairs against the wooden floor. The room smells of boiled potatoes, creamed corn, and fresh bread pulled from ovens only moments before. Meals in these schools were simple, hearty, and designed to fill hungry bellies rather than delight. But even in their plainness there is comfort. On each tray sits a slice of meatloaf, its surface glazed with a thin smear of tomato, the flavour savoury and familiar. The meat is mixed with breadcrumbs and onions, stretched as far as it can go to feed every child at the long tables. Next to it, scoops of mashed potatoes, smooth and buttery, with a small ladle of brown gravy poured over the top. Can you see the steam rising? Smell the richness carried on the air? Alongside the potatoes lies a portion of stewed carrots, soft and slightly sweet, their orange colour bright against the plate. A small roll of bread, still warm, waits to be torn apart and dipped into whatever sauce remains. These are the rhythms of school meals, predictable, plain, yet grounding in their own way. And then there is dessert. Tonight it might be rice pudding, creamy and sprinkled with nutmeg. The texture is soft, almost custard-like, each spoonful sweet without being overwhelming. Children scrape their bowls eagerly, some sneaking seconds when the kitchen staff isn't looking. Isn't it gentle to imagine such small indulgences, the way sweetness could brighten even the most ordinary of days? The sound in the hall is a steady hum, forks clinking against plates, voices rising in chatter, laughter spilling out in bursts. A teacher walks the room, nodding kindly, making sure everyone eats enough. For many children, especially those from poor families, these meals were a lifeline, a guarantee of warmth and nourishment in uncertain times. Step outside with me for a moment, into the cool night air. The sky is dark velvet, scattered with stars. From the kitchen window the smell of bread lingers, drifting softly across the yard. A few boys linger near the steps, chewing on apples they saved from supper, their voices low as they trade stories. The crunch of each bite cuts through the silence, crisp and clean, the taste sharp against the sweetness of the night. Inside again, the dining hall quiets as children finish their meals. Some fold their napkins neatly, others race out toward their dormitories, their laughter trailing behind. The staff clears plates, the clatter echoing faintly, and the lanterns dim one by one until only the kitchen glows. Isn't it calming to think of life in such places? where every evening followed the same rhythm, where children found comfort in the steam of potatoes and the sweetness of pudding, where the smell of bread baking became the memory of safety. It may not have been glamorous, but it was steady, reliable, a kind of nourishment that fed both body and spirit. As the last lantern is turned down, the hall slips into silence, save for the faint rustle of wind against the windows, and we too step softly away, carrying with us the warmth of meatloaf, the sweetness of pudding, and the laughter of children echoing into the night. The road winds onward, waiting with its next chapter, its next gathering, its next taste of early America. The year is 1918, and the city hums with change. The Great War has reached across the ocean, and though battles rage far away, life here in America feels its tremors. Factories buzz with long hours, women step into jobs once filled by men, and families adjust to rationing. Yet in the kitchens of small homes, the rhythm of meals continues, reshaped by both scarcity and creativity. Step inside a modest apartment, its walls close and warm from the coal stove that burns in the corner. A pot simmers on the stovetop, steam curling into the air, carrying with it the scent of beans slow-cooked with onions and salt pork. Bean stews became staples during these years, cheap, filling, and capable of stretching across days. Imagine ladling it into a bowl, the beans tender, the broth thick and savoury, comforting in its simplicity. On the table sits bread, not always white but often brown or rye, baked at home when flour was stretched thin. A pat of butter, precious and carefully rationed, melts across a slice, soaking into its warm surface. Sometimes, instead of butter, families use drippings saved from bacon or meat, spreading it thinly for flavour. Can you picture it? The shine of fat against coarse bread, the taste smoky and salty like a reminder of earlier meals. Desserts were modest but not forgotten. Molasses cookies made with syrup instead of scarce sugar, cooled on a tin tray. They are dark, chewy, spiced faintly with ginger. Each bite is dense yet comforting, sweet enough to brighten the evening without straining the pantry. Children nibble them slowly, savouring each one, knowing extras may not come again soon. The air in the room hums with voices. A father reads the newspaper aloud, headlines about the war mixing with local gossip. A mother stitches quietly at the table, her needle glinting in lamplight. The children eat with steady rhythm, scraping bowls clean, trading quiet jokes. Isn't it soothing to think of these families holding steady against the storms of the world, rooted by the comfort of warm food and soft lamplight? Beyond the apartment, the city streets carry their own aromas. Vendors still set up stalls selling roasted chestnuts in paper cones. The smell drifts with the steam into the cool night, earthy and rich, comforting against the chill. Imagine cracking one open, the nuts steaming in your hand, the taste nutty and slightly sweet. Street food like this felt like luxury in years when rations pressed hard. At soda fountains too, creativity reigned. With sugar rationed, drinks were sweetened lightly, flavoured with syrups made from fruit or honey. A glass of sarsaparilla or root beer fizzed in tall cups, the carbonation bubbling brightly even when the sweetness was softer than before. Young men and women sat at counters, sipping slowly, laughing as if the world outside could not touch this small bubble of light. And yet, beneath the everyday hum, there was an awareness of change. Letters arrived from soldiers abroad, sometimes read aloud at the table. Recipes passed through neighbourhoods, each one teaching how to stretch a little further, how to make mock apple pie from crackers and cinnamon, how to substitute honey for sugar, how to find sweetness even in scarcity. These were not just meals, they were acts of resilience. As the evening deepens, the family gathers together for prayer, their voices quiet but steady. The coal stove crackles, casting faint shadows on the walls. The bowls are empty now, the last cookie eaten, the bread wrapped away for tomorrow. The night holds both uncertainty and peace. The world may tremble, but here, inside, warmth lingers. Isn't it calming to think of how even in difficult years food carried people forward? Not with abundance, but with creativity, with patience, with love poured into every pot of beans and every tray of molasses cookies. The lamplight dims, The stove embers glow faintly, and the city outside softens into sleep. And we too step onward, carrying with us the taste of beans, the sweetness of molasses, and the quiet resilience of families bound together in uncertain times. The year is 1919, and the country stands at the edge of change. The war has ended, soldiers are returning home, and the rhythm of daily life begins to shift once again. In towns, both large and small, celebration mingles with fatigue, and food, as always, becomes the centerpiece of gathering. Imagine a community hall filled with long tables, each one stacked with dishes brought by families eager to share. The air is warm, buzzing with chatter, filled with the smells of roasts, pies, and fresh bread. It is a welcome home supper, the kind held for soldiers returning from the front, where every dish carries a message of care. On one table lies a roast chicken, its skin golden and crisp, juices pooling beneath. Beside it, bowls of mashed potatoes glow pale and creamy, speckled with black pepper. There are green beans cooked with onions and bacon, their flavour smoky and hearty. The plates are passed quickly, hands eager to serve returning sons, brothers and fathers. Can you imagine that first bite after years of rations and canned goods? The taste of home, rich and grounding like a memory made edible. And then there are casseroles, baked in heavy dishes, bubbling with noodles, cheese and bits of ham. The tops are browned and crusty, the insides soft and warm. Recipes like these were born of necessity, stretching what little a family had, yet they became symbols of comfort, especially in times of reunion. Dessert tables groan under the weight of pies and cakes. Apple pie, the most beloved, sits in neat rows, its filling bubbling with cinnamon and sugar. Chocolate cake appears too, though cocoa is still precious, its frosting glossy and thick. Sugar cookies shaped into stars dusted with sprinkles shine beneath the lantern light. Children dart to this table first, their laughter rising as they sneak a bite before supper is properly served. At the corner of the hall, a jug of lemonade sits, tart and sweet, poured into tin cups. The coolness cuts through the heaviness of the meal, refreshing as laughter fills the air. Nearby, coffee percolates, its sharp scent curling into the room, poured endlessly for parents and grandparents who sit with stories to tell. Step outside for a moment, into the cool evening air. The streets are quieter than the hall, but the faint hum of music drifts outward. A fiddler plays, joined by a banjo, their notes weaving into a lively tune. Families spill onto the steps, dancing under the soft glow of lanterns, their voices raised in song. The smell of food clings to their clothes. Roast chicken, cinnamon pie, fresh bread, as though the night itself is wrapped in warmth. Isn't it gentle to think of food as both sustenance and celebration? Each dish placed on the table not just to feed, but to welcome, to honour, to remind someone that they are home. In 1919, meals like these stitched families back together piece by piece after years of separation. As the night deepens, plates empty and the tables grow bare. Leftovers are packed into baskets, carried home for the next day. Soldiers lean back in their chairs, eyes heavy but hearts full. Children doze against their mothers' shoulders, the taste of cookies still sweet on their lips. The fiddler plays his last note. The hall softens into silence, and the lanterns are dimmed one by one. And we too take our leave, carrying with us the golden glow of roast chicken, the sweetness of apple pie, and the laughter of voices raised in reunion. The road ahead calls us onward into the 1920s, where new flavours and new rhythms wait to be discovered. The year is 1920 and the air is alive with a new kind of energy. The war has ended, prohibition has just begun, and the jazz age hums faintly in the background. In cities, speakeasies hide behind plain doors, while in small towns, kitchens glow with the warmth of family meals. Life feels both uncertain and full of possibility, and food reflects that balance. Simple, steady, but with hints of indulgence sneaking through. Picture a quiet Sunday supper in a small town home. The table is covered with a checkered cloth, the scent of pot roast drifting steadily from the kitchen. The meat has simmered all afternoon with carrots, onions and potatoes until it is tender enough to fall apart beneath the fork. The gravy is rich, ladled generously across the plate, soaking into everything it touches. Doesn't it sound like comfort itself? Slow-cooked and patient? Beside the roast sits a pan of cornbread, golden and steaming, its crust crisp at the edges, its centre soft and buttery. A pat of butter melts into each slice, the sweetness of corn shining through. Children fight playfully over the corner pieces where the crust is crunchiest. Their laughter floats into the air like music, mixing with the smell of roast and bread. On another plate lies a fresh salad of cucumbers and onions, soaked in vinegar, their sharp tang balancing the richness of the roast. Pickles, too, sit in a jar, their brine sharp and refreshing. Isn't it curious how something as small as a pickle could brighten an entire meal, like a spark of brightness in the midst of heaviness? And then there is dessert. Tonight it may be banana pudding, layers of sliced bananas, custard smooth and golden, with a crown of soft meringue lightly browned. Bananas, once exotic, had become a staple in American markets by the 1920s, shipped in from warmer climates. To taste one was to taste the wider world, sweet and soft, new yet already beloved. Imagine dipping your spoon into that pudding, the flavours blending into something at once simple and indulgent. Step outside for a moment into the soft evening air. The street hums faintly with voices, neighbours calling goodnight across porches. Children play a last game of tag before being called in, their footsteps echoing on wooden sidewalks. A phonograph plays somewhere nearby, the scratchy notes of a jazz tune drifting into the night. The music is lively, playful, like a hint of the decade's energy slipping even into quiet towns. In the city, the rhythm is different. Behind closed doors and hidden basements, speakeasies stir. The clink of glasses, the low thrum of piano, the whisper of secret laughter fill the air. Though prohibition has banned alcohol, drinks still flow, disguised as sodas or mixed into cocktails. Imagine sipping a ginger ale poured into a frosty glass, bubbles rising to tickle your nose. Some glasses may hold more than ginger ale, but the thrill of secrecy makes every sip taste brighter. Street vendors continue their work as well. Hot dogs, once humble sausages, are sold wrapped in buns topped with mustard and onions. Pretzels twist golden in paper bags, their salt glistening under street lamps. Roasted peanuts crackle in carts, their shells scattering across sidewalks. The smell of fried dough lingers at every corner, warm and sweet, impossible to ignore. Isn't it fascinating to imagine how the same country could hold both the hush of Sunday suppers and the thrill of midnight speakeasies? How food bridged both worlds, steady at the family table, adventurous in the hidden corners of the city. As the night deepens, the supper dishes are cleared, the phonograph softens, and the city lights glow faint against the stars. The world is shifting, growing louder, faster, livelier. But for now, the warmth of roast and cornbread, the sweetness of pudding, and the hum of music keep the night gentle. And so we step onward, carrying with us both the quiet and the thrill, into the next turn of the road where more stories wait to unfold. The year is 1921, and summer stretches wide across the countryside. The air is heavy with the scent of cut grass, wild flowers, and the faint sweetness of fruit ripening on the vine. It is the season of picnics, when families pack baskets and gather in meadows along rivers, or beneath tall trees whose branches sway gently in the warm breeze. Picture a red and white blanket spread over soft grass. Children tumble across it laughing, while parents unpack baskets lined with cloth. Inside are jars of lemonade sweating with condensation, their tart fragrance drifting into the air. Glasses are filled and passed around, the ice clinking softly, the first sip puckering lips before sweetness smooths it out. Isn't it refreshing just to imagine? From the basket comes fried chicken, wrapped carefully in wax paper. Its crust, golden and seasoned, still crackles faintly even after the journey. Fingers grow greasy, lips shine, but no one minds. The taste is too rich, too joyful, too tied to summer. Next to it lies potato salad, creamy and cool, studded with hard-boiled eggs and mustard. Each bite balances the chicken's crispness with tangy smoothness. Fresh bread emerges too, sliced thick, ready to be spread with butter or jam. The jam glows jewel-like in the sunlight. Strawberry, blackberry, or peach, made at home just weeks earlier. The sweetness clings to the bread, staining fingers, its flavor like a burst of summer itself. Can you taste it? The fruit rich and bright, softened into a spread that carries the memory of orchards. And then there are pies. Every picnic seems to have at least one. Apple with its cinnamon-scented filling, peach bubbling beneath a lattice crust, berry pies that stain lips and tongues with purple smiles. Children run barefoot through the grass, slices in hand, their laughter carrying over the meadow. Isn't it gentle to picture such carefree joy, where dessert is eaten as the sun warms your shoulders and the breeze hums softly? Nearby, a jug of iced tea sits cooling, its colour dark amber, slices of lemon floating like suns across the surface. Adults sip it slowly, the tea bitter yet sweet, grounding them as they watch their children dart among the trees. Conversations flow easily, about crops, about neighbours, about the steady rhythm of life that stretches like the fields themselves. And sometimes a phonograph is brought along, wound carefully, its horn polished. Music floats across the meadow, ragtime, waltzes, even the faint strains of new jazz tunes. Couples sway gently, their shoes brushing grass, the music mingling with the song of cicadas. At the edge of the picnic, watermelon is sliced open, its rind cracking sharply, revealing deep red flesh glistening in the sun. Triangles are passed around, juice dripping down chins and staining clothes, seeds spit gleefully into the grass. The fruit is cool, sweet, and almost too abundant, yet no one complains. Summer and watermelon are inseparable, as natural a pair as sunlight and shade. As the day wanes, baskets grow lighter, children grow drowsy, and the golden light stretches across the meadow. The last bites of pie are finished, the last sips of lemonade drained. Families pack slowly, reluctant to let the day end, folding blankets and tying baskets, the air still sweet with jam and fruit. Isn't it soothing to think of such afternoons? Days where time felt endless, where food was both sustenance and celebration, where laughter and bread shared under trees became the very definition of summer. As twilight settles, fireflies blink gently in the grass, and the meadow hums with crickets. Families head homeward, baskets on arms, the taste of fried chicken and sweet fruit lingering like a promise. And we too step softly into the evening, carrying the glow of picnic laughter and the flavours of summer along the road that still stretches ahead. The year is 1922 and the city streets glow brighter than ever before. Electric lights are spreading, flickering against tall brick buildings, and with them comes a new kind of nightlife. Imagine walking down a busy avenue as the evening settles. The air is alive with the smell of roasted chestnuts from corner carts, the sweet trace of chocolate drifting from candy shops, and the savoury aroma of diners where families crowd around booths. Step inside a diner now, its chrome fixtures gleaming softly in lamplight, though some still carry the hum of gaslight. The counter stretches long, lined with stools where men in work jackets and women in cloche hats sit shoulder to shoulder. The menu is simple, but every dish feels like comfort. On the counter sits a steaming bowl of chicken noodle soup, its broth golden, dotted with carrots and celery, strands of noodles curling softly around the spoon. Imagine leaning over, letting the steam warm your face before taking that first sip. The salt, the warmth, the way it seems to wrap you from the inside out. Beside it, perhaps, lies a plate of sandwiches. Ham and cheese on rye, turkey with mustard, roast beef sliced thin and stacked high. The bread is thick, often buttered before being grilled lightly on the pan. Each bite is hearty, filling, quick to serve but slow to forget. Doesn't it feel grounding, the idea of a sandwich eaten under neon glow, surrounded by the low hum of city voices? And then, of course, the diner pies. Rows of them sit beneath glass domes, each one waiting patiently. Apple pie with cinnamon, lemon, meringue crowned in peaks of golden fluff. Chocolate cream rich and glossy. A slice is served on a simple plate, a dollop of whipped cream melting slowly against its surface. Imagine the fork cutting through the crust, the filling spilling gently outward, the sweetness carrying you away for a moment. Children sip from tall glasses of soda. Root beer, sarsaparilla, orange fizz, served with straws that bend just enough to tickle the nose. The fizz bubbles up, sweet and sharp, leaving foam moustaches that make them giggle. Adults, meanwhile, nurse cups of coffee, strong and endless, poured from heavy pots that never seem to empty. Step outside again, into the glow of the street. Vendors line the sidewalks, selling hot dogs for a nickel, topped with onions and mustard, wrapped in soft buns. The scent of fried onions lingers thick in the air, clinging to coats and gloves. Peanuts roast in carts nearby, their shells cracking under eager fingers. At another corner, a man sells candy apples, the glossy red coating hard beneath the bite, the apple crisp and sweet beneath the shell. The music of the city is everywhere too. From one doorway comes the faint sound of a piano, jazz notes tumbling into the street like laughter. From another, a phonograph spins, its tunes scratchy but lively. The world is changing, and the food of the streets and diners reflects that change. Fast, warm, accessible, a taste of the modern age. Isn't it fascinating to think how quickly the pace had shifted? Just a few years earlier, meals meant long cooking in farmhouse kitchens, yet now a hot dog on the corner or a slice of pie in a diner feels just as defining. Simplicity and speed becoming their own kind of comfort. As the night deepens, the glow of electric signs flickers higher against the buildings. The hum of voices softens, and the food carts begin to roll away. The city holds its breath before midnight, and the last sip of coffee cools in a forgotten cup on the counter. And we too step softly into the night, carrying with us the warmth of soup, the fizz of soda, and the sweetness of diner pie. Ahead, more roads open, rural and urban, slow and fast, each with its own story waiting to be tasted. The year is 1923, and the countryside hums with its own kind of rhythm, different from the bright city lights. Picture a barn dance on a Saturday evening, the wide doors thrown open to let the warm summer air drift through. Lanterns hang from beams, swaying slightly, their glow mingling with the smell of hay, wood, and food carried in baskets by families arriving from miles around. Tables are set along the edges of the barn, each covered with dishes prepared in farm kitchens that very morning. A potluck feast, where every family brings their best, and the variety is as wide as the fields themselves. At the center sits fried chicken piled high, its golden crust still crisp, the scent spiced with pepper and salt. Nearby, casseroles bubble with noodles, cheese and vegetables, each one browned perfectly on top. Platters of cornbread gleam golden in the lamplight, their edges caramelized, their centers soft. Children snatch pieces before the meal officially begins, crumbs trailing down their shirts as they grin. Bowls of potato salad cool on the tables, tangy with mustard and vinegar. Pickles gleam in jars, dill sprigs floating like whispers of green. Coleslaw adds its crunch, cabbage sliced thin, carrots ribboned through, vinegar dressing sharp and refreshing. Every dish feels familiar, yet each carries its own small twist, a grandmother's hand or a family's tradition. And then the desserts. Oh, the desserts stretch farther than the eye can see. Pies of apple, peach and cherry, their crusts golden and flaking. Cobblers heavy with berries, juices bubbling up around the edges, staining plates deep purple. Cakes layered high with frosting, some simple, some ornate, each slice a celebration of the season's abundance. Imagine the sweetness filling the air, drifting alongside the music of fiddles tuning up in the corner. Once the food is blessed, the meal begins. Plates are filled, hands passing dishes back and forth, laughter rising over the scrape of forks. Conversations hum about crops, weather, and the latest tales from town. Children dart back for seconds, their plates piled higher each time. Isn't it calming to think of such evenings, where the entire community became one family gathered around one endless table? The fiddler strikes a lively tune, and soon the floor fills with dancers. Boots tap against wooden planks, skirts swirl, hands clasp and release in rhythm. The music lifts the night, carrying joy with every note. Outside, fireflies blink in the tall grass, their glow joining the lantern light spilling from the barn doors. Step outside for a moment, and the night air cools against your cheeks. The smell of fried chicken still lingers, mingling with the faint scent of clover from the fields. A group of young men gather near the fence, passing a jug of sweet cider, its taste sharp and refreshing. Children chase each other in the yard, laughing until their sides ache, the taste of pie still on their tongues. As the night deepens, the tables grow bare, but the music only slows, never truly stops. Couples sway to softer tunes, the fiddler playing slower, sweeter notes as lanterns flicker lower. Parents gather sleepy children, wrapping them in blankets, carrying them toward wagons. The last slices of pie are tucked into baskets, saved for tomorrow. Isn't it gentle to picture such nights, where food, music and laughter stitched the fabric of community, tighter than any hardship could tear it? Where a plate of fried chicken, a slice of pie and the sound of fiddles could turn an ordinary barn into a cathedral of joy. And so, as the lanterns dim and the music fades into the hum of crickets, we step softly away, carrying with us the taste of cornbread and pie, the echo of laughter, and the glow of fireflies leading us toward the next story. The year is 1924, and summer in the city has its own flavour. The heat lingers heavy between tall brick buildings, fans whir softly in apartment windows, and children play stickball in the streets until the sun dips low. As the day winds down, families gather on stoops, fanning themselves gently, while the sound of ice vendors clinking blocks into wagons drifts through the air. Food in these hot months is lighter, cooler, made to refresh as much as nourish. Picture a kitchen where the icebox hums faintly, blocks of ice slowly melting in their tin trays. From it, the mother pulls a chilled pitcher of lemonade, beads of condensation racing down the glass. She pours it into tall cups, each sip tart and sharp, cooling the body from the inside. On the table sits a plate of cold sliced ham served with mustard and rye bread. The ham is savoury, salty, easy to prepare without heating the oven. Beside it lies a bowl of potato salad, creamy and cool, dotted with chopped pickles for tang. Tomatoes, sliced fresh and sprinkled with salt, gleam red on a dish, their flavour bursting with the ripeness of summer. Can you imagine the freshness of it all, the relief these simple foods bring against the heavy warmth? Children nibble on watermelon, slices larger than their faces, juice dripping down their arms. Seeds are spit playfully onto the sidewalk, laughter echoing between the buildings. Watermelon is more than food. It is the taste of summer itself, cooling and sweet, each bite a burst of sunshine turned into sugar. Vendors still walk the streets, calling out with sing-song voices. One pushes a cart filled with pretzels, their golden knots sprinkled with coarse salt, sold for a penny apiece. Another sells ices, shaved ice drizzled with flavoured syrups, bright red cherry or green lime, staining tongues and lips with colour. Imagine holding a paper cup of shaved ice, the sweetness melting into cool water at the bottom, the kind of treat that makes the hottest days bearable. In the evening, families sometimes gather at rooftop suppers. Blankets are spread across the tarred roofs, lanterns lit against the night sky. From here, the city hum softens and the air feels cooler. Cold fried chicken is passed around, its flavour just as satisfying as when it was hot. Jars of pickles are opened, bread and butter slices gleaming pale, dill spears sharp and green. Pies baked earlier in the morning before the heat grew heavy are sliced and served. Peach, blackberry or lemon, their sweetness the perfect end to a long day. And sometimes there is ice cream. In 1920, the Eskimo pie was patented, a chocolate-coated bar of ice cream wrapped neatly in foil. By 1924, it had become a summer craze. Imagine unwrapping the foil slowly, the chill rushing against your fingers, the chocolate shell cracking softly as your teeth break through. The ice cream inside is cold, smooth, sweet, a delight in every bite. Isn't it soothing to picture such joy, held in something so small, so fleeting yet so memorable? The night settles deeper, stars faint against the glow of the city. Children grow drowsy, their bellies full, their fingers sticky with sugar and fruit. Parents sit quietly, sipping coffee or iced tea, their conversations low and easy. The hum of the street softens, the vendors' voices fade, and the only sound left is the rustle of a summer breeze brushing through the open windows. Isn't it gentle to think of these summer nights, when food became both comfort and relief, when ice cream and watermelon carried laughter through the streets, when rooftops became dining rooms beneath the stars? As the lanterns dim on the rooftops and families retreat indoors, we too step softly away, carrying with us the sweetness of ice cream, the cool bite of lemonade, and the echo of children's laughter fading into the warm night. The year is 1925, and autumn has settled over the land. The air carries a crispness now, sharp and cool, filled with the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. Farmers finish their harvest, wagons heavy with pumpkins, apples and corn, and small towns come alive with festivals that celebrate the turning of the season. Picture a county harvest fair. It's square, filled with stalls. Baskets overflow with red apples, their skins shiny, polished as though by the season itself. Pumpkins rest in neat rows, their orange glow bright against the brown earth. The smell of roasting corn drifts from a fire pit nearby, each ear charred just enough, its kernels bursting with smoky sweetness beneath a pat of butter. Imagine holding one warm in your hands, the butter dripping onto your fingers, the crunch carrying autumn's flavour with every bite. Apple cider flows freely too, ladled steaming from barrels into tin cups. Its fragrance, spiced with cinnamon and clove, warms the air before it even touches the lips. One sip and the sweetness spreads across the tongue, tart and rich, comforting against the chill of evening. Isn't it calming to think of a drink that tastes like the very essence of fall? On one table lies pumpkin pie, slices arranged neatly, their custard smooth and glowing orange, topped with a hint of whipped cream. The spice of nutmeg and cinnamon rises gently with every forkful, warm and grounding. Beside it sits apple pie, its crust golden, its filling bubbling with sugar and cinnamon. Children race to the dessert tables, their cheeks already flushed from the cold, eager to taste the sweetness of the season. Vendors sell candied apples, the glossy red shells catching the lantern light, hard beneath the teeth but giving way to crisp, juicy fruit inside. The sound of children biting into them rings out across the fair, sharp crunches followed by laughter as the sticky candy clings to their lips and cheeks. Cotton candy swirls in the air as well, spun into pink and blue clouds, dissolving instantly on the tongue. Step into a farmhouse kitchen nearby, and the scene grows even cozier. A pot of stew simmers on the stove. Beef, carrots, onions, potatoes, its aroma filling every corner of the room. The broth is thick, rich, carrying hours of slow cooking. A loaf of bread cools on the counter, its crust dark and hearty, sliced thick to dip into the stew. The fire crackles in the stove, casting warmth into the chilly night. Families gather close, their spoons scraping the bowls, their conversations soft and steady. For dessert, perhaps, there is apple dumpling. Whole apples wrapped in pastry, baked until golden, then drowned in a sweet syrup of sugar and spice. The pastry flakes apart at the touch of a fork, the apple inside soft and fragrant. Imagine the steam rising, the syrup pooling sweetly at the bottom of the plate. A dish so simple yet so perfect for autumn evenings. Outside, the sound of fiddles and banjos drifts from the town square, where neighbours gather to dance beneath strings of lanterns. The music is lively, the air sharp with chill, but the warmth of food and company keeps spirits high. The ground is littered with leaves, crunching beneath boots as couples twirl and children chase each other through the crowd. Isn't it soothing to imagine these autumn nights, where food celebrates not just survival but abundance, where apples, pumpkins, and corn become symbols of gratitude, where the chill in the air is softened by the warmth of pie and cider? As the festival winds down, lanterns flicker low, families carry baskets home filled with apples and bread, and the last strains of music fade into the quiet countryside. The stars glow brighter against the crisp black sky, and the season itself feels like a blanket settling across the land. And we too step softly onward, carrying with us the warmth of cider, the sweetness of candied apples, and the glow of pumpkin pie, memories of autumn guiding us toward the next story waiting just ahead. The year is 1926, and winter has crept quietly across the towns and farms of America. The air is sharp now, breath turning to mist with every exhale. Snow drapes over rooftops and fences, softening the world into white silence. Inside, however, homes glow with warmth, kitchens alive with the steady work of feeding families through the coldest months. Picture a parlour where the fire burns low, its crackle steady, casting flickering shadows across the room. The smell of bread baking drifts from the kitchen, mingled with the rich scent of stew simmering on the stove. A pot of beef and barley bubbles slowly, the broth thick and earthy, filling the air with comfort. Carrots and turnips soften into the mixture, each spoonful hearty enough to chase away the chill outside. On the table rests a loaf of dark bread, its crust thick and crackling, its centre warm and soft. A knife slices through, releasing steam that smells of yeast and grain. Butter is spread thick, melting into the surface almost instantly. Isn't it calming to imagine holding a slice of warm bread in winter, the heat seeping into your hands, the flavour steady and grounding? For supper, families might also enjoy roasted root vegetables, parsnips, carrots and potatoes spread across iron pans, seasoned simply with salt and fat. Their edges caramelize in the oven, turning sweet, their insides tender and golden. Children spear them eagerly with forks, the sweetness surprising in each bite. And then there are the small treats of winter evenings. Popcorn popped fresh on the stove in a heavy pan, kernels dancing and bursting against the lid. A sprinkle of salt, a drizzle of butter, and the bowl is passed hand to hand as stories are told by firelight. Imagine the crunch in the quiet of a winter night. The taste sharp and warm, simple yet so deeply comforting. Sometimes, too, molasses cake fills the house with its rich, dark scent. Dense and sticky, flavoured with ginger and clove, it is baked in square pans and sliced thick. Served with a dollop of whipped cream, or just on its own, each bite feels like warmth wrapped in spice. In those days, molasses was often cheaper than sugar, and its deep sweetness became the flavour of many winter nights. Step outside for a moment. The snow crunches beneath your boots, crisp and clean. From the houses around, faint curls of smoke rise from chimneys, carrying scents of stew, bread and pies into the frosty air. The world is quiet, save for the distant jingle of sleigh bells as a horse-drawn sleigh glides down the road, its runners hissing across the snow. Laughter drifts from it, muffled beneath scarves and hats, bright against the stillness of night. Back inside, hot drinks wait to thaw the cold. Cocoa simmers on the stove, thick and sweet, served in enamel mugs. Marshmallows, new and popular in the 1920s, float atop, melting slowly into creamy softness. Coffee, too, brews strong for the adults, its sharp aroma mingling with the sweetness of cocoa. Even tea, steeped with lemon or honey, finds its place by the fire. Isn't it soothing to imagine wrapping your hands around a steaming cup, the heat spreading through your fingers, the first sip carrying peace into your chest? Children curl up under quilts, cheeks rosy, their bellies full of stew and bread. Parents rock gently in chairs, the fire casting their faces in amber glow. Outside, the snow falls softly, piling against windowsills, muting the world into silence. Isn't it gentle to think of such winter nights? Where the storm outside became a backdrop for warmth inside, where bread, stew and cocoa carried comfort through the darkest, coldest hours. Nights like these were not just about food, but about survival wrapped in sweetness, hardship softened by love and routine. As the fire burns low and embers glow faintly, the house settles into quiet. The snow continues to fall, blanketing the world deeper into stillness, and we too step softly onward, carrying with us the taste of warm bread, the sweetness of molasses cake, and the hush of winter nights waiting for spring. The year is 1927 and spring begins to stir after a long winter. Snow has melted into the soil, rivers run full with thaw, and the air carries a sweetness of blossoms just opening. In small towns and farms, families prepare gardens, planting seeds with hands that have waited all winter to feel the earth again. Along with this season of growth comes a new kind of food, fresh, green, alive with flavour. Picture a farmhouse kitchen where the windows are thrown open to let in the mild breeze. On the table lies a bowl of fresh greens, spinach, lettuce, watercress, picked just hours before. Dressed simply with vinegar and a drizzle of oil, the salad tastes sharp, bright, almost like a sip of spring itself. Isn't it soothing to imagine that first fresh bite after months of heavy stews and bread? Beside it sits a dish of new potatoes, their skins thin and tender, boiled until soft and tossed with butter and parsley. Their flavour is light, earthy, grounding yet refreshing. The family savours them slowly, as though each bite is a promise of the season to come. On the stove simmers a pot of vegetable soup. Carrots, peas, onions, and early herbs float in a broth clear and fragrant. The steam carries a scent both sweet and savoury, filling the air with gentle warmth. Bread is served alongside, baked in the morning, its crust golden, its inside soft, perfect for soaking up the broth. Children tear into it eagerly, the butter melting into their fingers as they eat. And then there is rhubarb. Long, tart stalks pulled from the garden, their red colour glowing like rubies. In the kitchen, they're chopped and simmered with sugar, their sharpness mellowed into a sweet sour sauce. Poured over shortcake or baked into pies, rhubarb becomes the taste of spring. A little sharp, a little sweet, always refreshing. Imagine a slice of rhubarb pie, its filling bright and tangy, its crust flaking at the touch of a fork. In town, spring fairs bloom with food just as much as flowers. Vendors sell baskets of strawberries, their red colour gleaming in the sun, their sweetness almost overwhelming after months of winter diets. Children stain their lips and fingers red, laughing as they eat handfuls straight from the baskets. Isn't it gentle to think of strawberries as both fruit and celebration, a reminder that life always returns? On some evenings, picnics begin again. Families pack baskets with cold chicken, slices of bread, jars of jam and fresh apples. Blankets are spread across green meadows, the air alive with the sound of birds returning, streams rushing, bees humming. The food is simple, but the setting makes it taste like a feast. A sandwich of ham and cheese eaten under budding trees carries more joy than the finest meal in winter's dark. Back at home, desserts carry spring's promise too. Angel food cake, light and airy, frosts the table with its white crumb. Sometimes strawberries are spooned over it, their juice soaking into the cake, turning each bite into a blend of soft sweetness and tart brightness. Lemon cakes also appear, their zest sharp and refreshing like sunlight baked into each slice. Step outside once more, into the soft spring night. The air is cool but gentle, carrying the faint scent of lilacs and damp earth. Frogs croak by the pond, fireflies blink faintly, and the stars shine through branches just beginning to bud. Families sit on porches after supper, sipping coffee or lemonade, their conversations light, their bellies full but not heavy. Isn't it calming to imagine this season of renewal, where food reflects the land's awakening, where salads, rhubarb and strawberries remind everyone that life is returning, that warmth is coming back? After the long hush of winter, spring suppers taste like hope itself. As the lamps are dimmed and the night deepens, the soft air slips into the windows, carrying with it the song of crickets. And we too step softly onward, carrying with us the taste of rhubarb pie, the sweetness of strawberries, and the gentle promise of spring. The year is 1928, and the country feels the steady pulse of prosperity. Automobiles hum along dusty roads, radios crackle with music, and cities rise taller every year. Yet even as the pace of life quickens, evenings still gather, families around dinner tables where meals are as much about comfort as they are about celebration. Picture a suburban kitchen, its windows glowing softly in the fading light. The table is set neatly, a roast chicken at its center. The skin shines golden, crisped with butter, the aroma filling every corner of the room. Around it sit bowls of mashed potatoes, smooth and rich, a boat of gravy waiting nearby. Imagine the steam curling upward, the first slice of chicken tender beneath the knife, the flavor grounding and familiar. Beside the roast there are green beans, cooked simply with onions, their freshness bright against the heavier dishes. Rolls, baked golden sit in a basket, their tops brushed with butter. Children snatch them eagerly, tearing them apart, steam puffing into the air. Isn't it soothing to imagine the comfort of bread, always there, always warm? Dessert tonight might be pineapple upside-down cake, a new favourite of the 1920s. Its caramelised sugar glistens, the pineapple rings glowing golden, a cherry set in the middle of each. The cake is moist, sweet, almost playful in its presentation. Imagine cutting into it, the syrup soaking into every crumb, each bite bright with fruit and caramel. It feels like a celebration baked into a pan. In the city, life moves a little faster, but food still finds its place in the rhythm. Diners and soda fountains buzz with energy, young men and women sharing sundaes piled high with ice cream, chocolate syrup, and whipped cream. The clink of spoons against tall glasses fills the air, laughter rising with the fizz of sodas poured from the fountain. Root beer floats become an evening ritual, cold, frothy, sweet, and endlessly comforting. Street vendors sell hot dogs for a nickel, their buns soft, their mustard tangy. Pretzels twist golden in paper bags, peanuts roast over hot coals, their shells crackling as they're split. Children clutch candy bars, new delights from the growing confectionery companies, Hershey's, Baby Ruth, Milky Way, sweet luxuries wrapped neatly in shiny paper. Isn't it fascinating to imagine the excitement of such small treats, each bite a taste of modern invention? At home, families experiment with recipes heard over the radio or read in women's magazines. Casseroles become popular. Noodles, cheese, bits of leftover meat, all baked into one bubbling dish. Jell-O, introduced at the turn of the century, now gleams on tables in colourful moulds, fruit suspended within like jewels. It jiggles playfully on plates, making children laugh before they scoop it eagerly with spoons. Step outside for a moment into the evening air. In neighbourhoods, porches hum with conversation. Neighbours share slices of cake or pass bowls of popcorn, popped fresh on the stove. Radios crackle with music drifting through the open windows, jazz tunes, dance rhythms, voices that carry across the warm night. The smell of food still lingers in the air. Gravy, roasted chicken, caramel sugar, mixing with the scent of cut grass and lilacs blooming by the fence. Isn't it gentle to think of life in these years? Balance between tradition and modernity? Roast suppers at home, hot dogs on the street, pineapple cakes cooling on kitchen counters, and ice cream sundaes eaten near and under neon diner lights. Food stitched together the old and the new, offering comfort while also celebrating change. As the night grows deeper, radios quiet, windows close, and families settle into rest. The dishes are washed, the table cleared, but the sweetness of cake, the warmth of bread, and the fizz of soda linger softly in memory. And we too step onward, carrying with us the glow of roast suppers, the laughter of soda fountains, and the sweetness of cakes baked golden in the age of jazz. The year is 1929, and though the country still hums with the rhythm of jazz and industry, a shadow begins to fall across it. The stock market trembles, uncertainty grows, and yet in kitchens, families continue to gather, clinging to the rituals of food and the comfort it brings. Picture a modest apartment in the city, its kitchen small but alive with the sound of sizzling. On the stove, onions and ground beef cook together, their aroma filling the room. The mixture is stretched with breadcrumbs, herbs and eggs, shaped into patties and fried crisp. Hamburgers, once street food, now find their way into homes, served on soft rolls with mustard or pickles. Imagine that first bite, the crust giving way to juicy meat, the tang of mustard sparking against it. Simple, inexpensive, but deeply satisfying. Beside it sits a bowl of macaroni and cheese, a dish that had gained popularity through packaged pasta sold by mail order. Elbows of macaroni coated in creamy cheese sauce, baked until the top bubbles golden and crisp. Children scoop it eagerly, their forks clinking against the tin pans, their faces glowing with delight. Isn't it soothing to picture such joy in small comforts, even as the world outside feels uncertain? On the counter rests a loaf of bread baked at home to save money. Its crust is dark and hearty, its inside soft, ready to be spread with butter or jam. Sometimes, supper might be nothing more than bread and soup, but bread made in one's own oven, rising with care, carried pride along with nourishment. For dessert, Apple Brown Betty sits steaming in a baking dish. Layers of apples and bread crumbs baked with sugar and butter, its crust caramelized, its inside soft and sweet. A spoonful of cream poured over it turns each bite into comfort itself. Warm, spiced, grounding. In the city streets, vendors still work their carts, selling hot dogs for a nickel, pretzels twisted golden, and peanuts roasted in their shells. Children press their coins into eager palms, clutching treats that taste like adventure, even when pockets are light. Candy bars, though small, still find their way into hands. Hershey's, Milky Way, Baby Ruth. Each bite a burst of sweetness against the heaviness of the times. Step outside for a moment, into the cool night. The glow of electric signs flickers above, though fewer people stop to gaze. Radios hum faintly from windows, carrying music that lifts the spirit. Neighbors share what they have, a slice of pie, a loaf of bread, a jar of pickles, reminding one another that even in leaner times, generosity can fill the table. Isn't it calming to imagine how food held steady against uncertainty? A hamburger on a soft roll, a dish of macaroni baked golden, an apple dessert sweetened with nothing more than sugar and care. These were meals that reminded families they could still sit together, still share, still laugh despite the weight of the world. As the night deepens, lamps dim, dishes are stacked neatly, and the hum of the city softens into quiet. The taste of bread and apples lingers, the warmth of family stronger than the chill of fear. And we too step softly onward, carrying with us the comfort of humble suppers, the sweetness of Apple Brown Betty, and the resilience of families holding each other close as the winds of change begin to stir. The year is 1930, and the first waves of the Great Depression have touched nearly every home. The abundance of the earlier decade feels like a distant memory. Yet even in these difficult times, families gather at their tables, finding ways to stretch what little they have into meals that carry both comfort and resilience. Picture a kitchen lit by lamplight, its shelves sparer than before, but its stove still warm. A pot of vegetable soup simmers quietly, made from scraps of carrots, potatoes, onions, and beans. The broth is thin, yet it carries the flavors of patience and care. A loaf of bread, coarse and homemade, waits on the counter to be dipped into the soup. Each slice is precious, each bite a reminder that even small things can fill hungry bellies. On another night, supper might be Hoover stew, a mixture of macaroni, canned tomatoes, and bits of hot dog, named half in jest but eaten with seriousness. The ingredients are simple, humble, yet the warmth of the dish stretches across a table where laughter and stories try to soften the edges of worry. Isn't it calming to think of how creativity turned scarcity into something sustaining? Sometimes desserts were mock creations. Mock apple pie made with crackers, sugar, and cinnamon. Mock cream pies filled with cornstarch puddings. They tasted not quite like the real thing, but they carried the spirit of sweetness, the hope that life could still be flavored with joy. Children ate them eagerly, their eyes bright, their bellies full enough to drift into sleep content. Step outside and the streets tell a quieter story. Soup kitchens line corners, the scent of broth and bread drifting into the cold air. Volunteers ladle bowls with steady hands, the steam rising like comfort offered freely. Neighbors share what little they have, sometimes nothing more than a jar of preserves or a basket of bread rolls. The act itself becomes nourishment as much as the food. In small towns, families gather for Sunday suppers, pooling ingredients so that a roast chicken or a pan of biscuits might grace the table. Apples stored through winter become cobblers, their sweetness baked beneath thick crusts. Potatoes stretch into stews, cornbread fills empty spaces on plates, and beans simmer endlessly in pots, steady as the rhythm of life itself. Isn't it gentle to imagine how food carried people not just through abundance but through hardship? The warmth of bread, the sweetness of cobbler, the comfort of soup, all simple, all humble, yet strong enough to hold communities together. As evening settles, the lamps dim and families gather close. Children drift to sleep with the taste of bread still on their tongues. Parents sit quietly, sipping weak coffee, their thoughts heavy yet softened by the glow of the fire. Outside, the night is silent, but inside, the memory of meals shared becomes a kind of shield. And so, we close this journey through the early 1900s. The farms and fairs, the diners and city streets, the kitchens both humble and grand. Each meal, each flavour told a story of a nation growing, struggling, celebrating, enduring. Food was never just food. It was love, memory, resilience, and hope placed on a plate. May these memories guide you now into peaceful dreams, the sounds of laughter and the smells of bread carrying you into gentle rest. If this calm journey helped you unwind, let me know below, only if it feels right. Sweet dreams, dear friend. And until we meet again, this is your storyteller whispering softly into the quiet night. Good night.